Sorry, folks. The recording offline because busy. Grim news. Big news, but grim. It's not good. It's bad news. Actually quite grim. I'm sure you're familiar. Maybe you're not. For the most part, the various branches of the government don't share data with one another. The idea is that historically there has been a lot of opposition to the idea of the US government constructing a sort of mega database that would give it unlimited information on every citizen. You collect people's medical records, criminal records, tax records, you bring everything together, and you basically have, like, you know, you have the eye of Sauron, right? You're looking at everyone. Of course, the goal of Palantir, right, the deep state surveillance and AI data aggregation company that's been working extensively with both the MIC and the Trump administration specifically, is trying to do exactly that. And unfortunately, a big blow has been dealt. This is another big step. Recently, despite previously promising not to, the IRS began sharing data on undocumented immigrants with ICE. Historically, the IRS hasn't done this because the argument from IRS has been, listen, whether or not you're undocumented, pay your taxes, okay? And you should pay your taxes because if you ever are going to, like, try to become a legal immigrant, it looks a lot better for you in those court proceedings if you've paid your taxes the whole time you're here than if you don't. So don't worry, the IRS will not share your data with ICE. Filing your taxes will never, ever, ever come back to bite you. It's just a good thing to do, so do it. And I think that's good. I think that that trend, that pattern, that policy was good because it not only meant more tax revenue, and I do believe in taxation, though admittedly undocumented immigrants aren't exactly the untapped pool of wealth that we've been ignoring, like billionaires are, capital gains and what have you. But it also helps better integrate undocumented immigrants, right? It makes them more a part of society so that when they're given a path, sort of a road to legal citizenship and God willing citizenship, legal residency and God willing, citizenship in the long run, they have more of a footing. Unfortunately, the IRS was pressured by the Trump administration into backwalking that policy. Now they share that data. Guess what other what other entity now shares data with ICE? It's Medicaid. Personal data, including addresses. This is really bleak. See, now, before, the message from the Trump administration was essentially, we are so desperate to capture and deport as many undocumented people as possible that we are willing to essentially tell them to not file taxes in the meantime. To the however many million undocumented immigrants, do not file your taxes, I guess, because that will, like, guaranteed now can be used to catch you. And now it's with Medicaid. Likewise, all of these, the exact provisions for getting on Medicaid, the exact requirements vary by state because Medicaid is a state-managed program. But now the argument is essentially that, you can't even use medical facilities. You can't benefit from Medicaid because if you do, ICE is going to get you. They're going to tear families apart. They're going to pull parents away from screaming children. They're going to ruin your life for no reason other than to fulfill a quota, which is why, by the way, ICE is getting so many of their deportations by waiting outside of, like, citizenship, residency hearings, like they're just waiting for people to finish talking with the judge peacefully, exactly as they're supposed to. Then they walk out in the hallway and ICE agents waiting for them, in a mask, of course, like the little Gestapo fucks they are. It's pretty grim, man. Can I say something? I want to talk about this because I've got a global audience. I have never been to London. I've never been to Paris, all right? I have heard stories of what the immigrant communities there are like, and there's a lot of variance there. But my understanding is that in some of these places, in Europe, mostly thinking in Europe, right? There are a lot of immigrant enclaves. That is to say, if you go there, there are places where people have not made much of an effort to integrate into the society that they live in, and they come from all sorts of places. It can be Syria, it can be Pakistan, it can be Morocco. I don't know. It's a rich tapestry. Paris, London, they have a million cultures there, right? I am generally very pro-immigration. You get one life. I think that you have a right to try to better your life as much as possible by, the world should be open to you as is an oyster. But I don't very much like enclaves because they're usually created by bigotry, right? Like, historically in the United States, enclaves have been created by the ostracization of the ethnic groups that enter into our cities. Why, for example, did the Irish and the Italians at first have, like, such they were stigmatized, they had bad reputations, so they formed little communities, ghettos, and they were treated quite poorly, folks. They were treated quite poorly. We did the same with Poles. Nowadays we don't think much of this. We think of Irish and Poles and Italians as just being we don't even really think of them much at all in America outside of, I guess, York and Jersey, right? You mostly think of, it's just Americans, right? I mean, that's how the line moves over time, I guess. I grew up in Los Angeles. There are a lot of undocumented immigrants in Los Angeles, but and look, it's a big city, so I'm sure there are enclaves, okay? But for the most part, one of the things that I liked about living in Los Angeles is that it really did all feel like a melting pot. I'm sure this is the case in many big American cities, but in LA, there are so many undocumented, like Mexicans and stuff, right? And people got along. I mean, there are troubles, sure, but like, I feel like for the most part, the ethnic character of Los Angeles was not one best described by a set of enclaves, And I think the reason for that is because the undocumented Mexican or whatever immigrants in Los Angeles had become enough of the cultural fabric of the city that they didn't feel the need to hide and cloister themselves in little micro communities where crime festers because they can't go outside of them. They can't engage with society at large. They can't engage with the police. They weren't so fearful that they had to hide like that. And I'm speaking very broadly. I know that there are probably many examples, personal examples, that people who are watching this who have lived in LA can think of that speak to the contrary. But I'm trying to contrast this, I guess, in my mind against a negative opposite. I'm trying to imagine, like, is it possible that two different countries, two different Western countries, we'll say the United States and France, might have a different relationship to their enclaves? That the small micro-ethnic, religious, racial, whatever communities that form within cities, that they might, in America, on average, be a little bit better integrated, a little bit more pro-social. What ICE is doing is destroying that. And I worry. This administration is not going to last forever. They will not deport all the illegals. They won't even come close. They'll try desperately to keep a 3,000 a day quota. Often they'll fail to meet it, as they have consistently up to this point. And they will eventually falter. This administration will be replaced. A less psychotic one will, replace it, even if it's a Republican administration, even if it's J.D. Vance. Things won't continue at this pace forever. But I worry that these policy changes might be permanent, or even if they're not permanent, the cultural changes that these policy changes are going to affect, those will be permanent. We are creating cloisters. We're creating enclaves. We are creating incentives for people who live here illegally, undocumented. I don't give a shit. We're creating incentives for them to not participate in society. Why bother to learn the language? Why bother to send your kids to school? Why pay taxes? Why go to hospitals? You're setting up all of the dominoes for social collapse here. You're essentially creating like unstated people, like people who are not just undocumented, but people who are so detached from the functionality of the state, its operations, like they exist essentially as a guaranteed criminal class. I'm sure there are plenty of allegories or there's like points of relation I could draw if I knew more about history or if I had more time to think about it. But I don't know. The Los Angeles that I grew up in was made possible because the undocumented immigrants there could go to hospitals and benefit from Medicaid, because they could pay taxes, because there are people there, incredibly talented. And I know a lot of people, even good-minded, left-leaning people, don't really know what I'm talking about when I say undocumented immigrants in Los Angeles. I'm talking about the goddamn bedrock of society there, okay? I'm talking about people who have worked the same job 25 years and are beloved by everyone who goes to the store they work at, or the restaurant they work at. I'm talking about people who have objectively made the city a better place. They pay their taxes, they do everything right. The only thing they did wrong was not get lucky in a dice roll on an incredibly flawed immigration process that hurts them and the country they now live in, the United States. I'm talking about people who have lived in the United States basically their entire lives, or at least longer than they've lived in any other country. I'm talking about people who often speak perfect English, who have strong opinions on American cultural icons, who follow with sports, people who are as American as they come, red-blooded, apple pie, you get the deal. But that can only happen because, in spite of our flawed immigration system, we've had enough of a laissez-faire attitude towards the undocumented immigrants that they've been allowed to become a part of society. Can you imagine how much worse things would be for them and for us, like the country at large, if they were made an enclave? 10, 12, 15 million people, whatever, just locked out of society. They would be forced to become criminals. They would be forced to, if they had, medical operations that they needed done, they would be forced onto the streets. They would indebt themselves permanently. They wouldn't pay taxes. They would have no reason to. They'd be incentivized not to. Crime would fester because it would be one of the only remaining ways for them to get reliable work. The country would be made worse in every way. It's not even a matter of sympathy for these people, and trust me, I have so much. But even if you didn't give a shit about a single undocumented immigrant in America, this just makes America worse. It makes life worse for its citizens. It makes life worse for the country. It makes the country more indebted. It makes the country poorer. These changes are going to affect, in the long term, our ability to fix these problems. You know, we're going to need some drastic solutions. When the woke whiplash comes around, you understand what I'm talking about, don't you? It's not going to be enough. The DACA shit, no, okay? I'm talking like straight pathway to citizenship for millions of people. I'm talking about a level of naturalization, of integration that is basically like unmatched in the modern Western world, you know? It's the only way. I mean, it's that or civilizational suicide. America was made strong in large part off the domestic manufacturing boom, the relative position we had economically over the rest of the world following World War II, when we were the only developed country that hadn't been bombed to shit, and in large part due to the, you know, the cultural output, right? The fact that we stand atop the world, and we're an ivory tower of sports media, of music, of movies, of books. We are disproportionately influential. All of these things we are compromising for absolutely no reason except to preserve the myth of the value of citizenship. You know, the delusional, liberal, institutionalist nonsense belief that there's something magical and innate about citizenship. And trust me, it is liberal, okay? These fascists who obsess over citizenship are doing so because they can't say what they really value. What they really value, of course, is blood, not citizenship, you know? Ethno-nationalists care about citizenship no more than anyone else. They only talk about it as a proxy for the racial supremacy that they're fighting for, which is why those white South Africans had no trouble getting their refugee claim accepted over here. No, citizenship and the statehood, these are liberal concepts. The value of the state, the value of citizenship has to be challenged at its root. I just don't give a shit, dude. Just pay your taxes, don't do bad shit to other people, and, I don't know, go to your local sports game. I don't do that part. I do pay my taxes, though, and I don't do bad stuff to people. As a matter of fact, I run perhaps the greatest politics commentary channel on all of YouTube, which I'd say sets my karmic debt. I mean, my heart's light as a feather, lighter than a feather, which is what it'll need to be when the day of judgment comes. So basically what I'm saying is a YouTube commentary channel for every undocumented Mexican. It's the only way forward.